Welcome. Today our road trip takes us to Martins Ferry, Ohio. It's in eastern Ohio on the Ohio River. It's one of those old towns that has lots of historic buildings and lots of history to it. So actually, Martins Ferry is the oldest European city in Belmont County. Yes, it's even bigger than St. Clairsville. Yesterday, our road trip took us to St. Clairsville, which is not too far from Martins Ferry. And St. Clairsville is a nice, big city, for back in these parts. But Martins Ferry doesn't look like it, but Martins Ferry is a little bigger than St. Clairsville. Now, in Martins Ferry's heyday, that would have been in 1940s. They had around 15,000 people in around 1940. Today, that population is less than half, probably around 6,700 people in Martins Ferry, give or take. Now, they have a lot of old buildings, and like I said, a lot of history here. We're going to go to later on at the end of the video. We're going to hit the steel mill. The steel mill, the old Wheeling-Pitt steel mill, is out of business. If you look on the right of that building, it says Nichols Bakery. This might have been one of the first buildings that Nichols Bakery used. I don't think Nichols Bakery is no longer in this building, but we're going to go to Nichols Bakery also. No trip to Martins Ferry is complete without stopping into Nichols Bakery. So here we go. We're going to go in there, and you get a real good price on the bread or the sweets, because this is the location where they give the locals a good price on the bakery items. People come from all over the tri-state area. Remember, this is like a tri-state area. You've got Ohio, and you've got the panhandle of West Virginia that comes up between Ohio and Pennsylvania. So people from all over eastern Ohio, the panhandle of West Virginia, and western Pennsylvania, they come from all over, come over here to Nichols Bakery. Now, in the past, one of the biggest employers, of course, was Wheeling-Pitt Steel. Unfortunately, they were bought out by, might have been some Russian company, some foreign company bought them out, and then they went bankrupt. That's an alarming pattern that we may talk about later if we have time. Now, I'm going to show you some pictures of the old buildings, and here's one of these old local community bars. The shape of these bars is sort of unique. All along the Rust Belt and other big cities back east, they have bars set up in old buildings like this. It's sort of a unique thing back east and in the Midwest. A lot of these communities are trying to save these old houses. Like the house like this is a historic house, along with this one. Some of them are being saved. Others are in disrepair, but there needs to be more people who want to save these old buildings and refurbish them to their original, authentic origins. What a handsome building these are. And a lot of, back here on the Ohio River, there were a lot of masons, bricklayers, stonemasons, and those are the buildings that are going to last the longest. You got the like this old brick factory. Now here's a really interesting church. It was founded in 1814. 1814. Over 200 years ago, this Methodist church was built. Now you talk about history, and it's still standing. Look at it. It's in beautiful condition. Beautiful condition. So I'll show you some of the old buildings. Again, during the end of the video, we're going to go on by the railroad tracks and look at an old abandoned building that would sit on the railroad tracks, and also we're going to hit the steel mill. There we go. The cornerstone of 1814. A lot of people disapprove of using the red man image, but we're not here to nitpick. We're in Martins Ferry, Ohio, along the river, and we're doing a tour. Now here's a very interesting part. This building here says it's a well field. Now this is right on the railroad track that goes up and down the Ohio River. Chemical spraying. Not sure what the original, what this was, but it had to definitely do with the rail line, the railroad. We're going to actually go in this abandoned building and take a look at it, see what it is. Some sort of, to be honest with you, I don't even know what it is, but here's the inside of the building. It's abandoned, in pretty good shape for being an abandoned old building on the railroad tracks. Got the clock up there, so they like to run the train lines had to be on time, or they should have been on time. Looks like there was pumping. Looks like they were pumping something. Maybe, well, I really don't know what this was. So if anybody out there knows what this building was, go ahead and leave a comment. Share it with us. This is what it's about. I'm going to share these old images, these historic images, these historic buildings. I want to share this with everybody, and I would love for people to leave comments about the building. If you see a building, say, hey, I know that building, and what the history is of the building. Here we are at the old Wheeling-Pitt steel factory in Martins Ferry. I'll show you. It's really sad. This was a huge company that put so many people to work. In my previous videos, I talked about Dean Martin. Dean Martin, when he lived in Steubenville, worked for a short time in one of the Wheeling-Pitt steel factories. And even in Steubenville, I think they employed in their heyday up to 10,000 people. And this Martins Ferry factory employed thousands of people. My uncle actually worked there and retired there. I think he put like 30 years in that factory. 30 years. If he sees these pictures, he might be very, very sad, because it looked like they're tearing it down. That's what's right there. It looks like they're tearing it down. Now it says RG Steel. I believe that's the Russian company that bought out the factory, and then they shut it down, and then it went bankrupt. This could be an agenda. I've always talked about there is a Chinese, Russian, Persian, and now the Ottomans are getting in on it, an alliance between the Chinese, the Russians, and the Persians. And I believe they have an agenda to hurt us. And one of those ways they would hurt us is to buy the old factories, shut them down, put them in bankruptcy, and then look what they do. They're tearing the place down. Once you tear these factories down, it's not so easy to build them back, is it? Yes, we have to be careful when foreign powers buy our infrastructure. When foreign powers like Russia, but China took all our factories. China literally took all our factories, and this is what's left of the Wheeling-Pitt steel in Martins Ferry. I don't want to go off on a tangent here. I don't want to go off on a rant. But who in the hell is in Washington, D.C. looking after us? Donald Trump came down here and got everybody to vote for him. But here's how the factory stands a year after Donald Trump is in office. He signed a $1.3 trillion omnibill, a budget, but there's no money in there for steel mills. There's no money in that $1.3 trillion for any factories. Think about that. There's money in there for Planned Parenthood. There's money in there for welfare and food stamps, but there's no money in there for factories. Now, if you're not alarmed, then you should be. I am totally alarmed. This is what's left of our factories. They're spending over $1 trillion on who knows what, but there's no money for factories. to me, that's flabbergasting, literally flabbergasting. I tried to stay positive on this video. I wanted to stay positive, but when you look at one of our great old factories in this condition, I mean, how can you stay positive when our politicians are spending over $1 trillion on pork? They're pigs. They're literally pigs in Washington, D.C., and there's no money there for our factories. Well, I'll leave you on that note.